Our next speaker is Ron Friedman, who one time I was at a meeting at Stonefield Joseph's, and Ron basically and I play golf together and are good friends. And I never saw this guy in front of his whole staff, and he's a bulldog and bright and commands attention. And so I'm going to step back because I don't want to, I don't want to impose on your.
How y'all doing? All right. Good. You need a break? You want to stand up for a second, relax, stretch? No? All right, no. I want to ask a couple questions. How many of you are presently in the apparel industry? Show me your hands. Great, a lot of you. How many of you are not in the apparel industry but want to get into the business? Raise your hands. Okay, the other half of you. That's good. It's a great business. I've been in business for 38 years as an accountant. It is a fabulous business. Used to be you could get into this business with a few dollars. And I'll tell you a story. When I started in the business, I don't want to say it was 1971, but that's when I got in business. You'd walk down to Manufacturers Bank on Los Angeles 9th Street. You walk in there and you see a gentleman by the name of Sam Simons. And Sam would look at you right in the face, and you'd ask him for money because you want to go to business. And Sam would say, I'm going to give you $50,000 to start your business. And I want one promise from you, that you're going to pay me back. And you went into the business with $50,000 and you paid him back. The Manufacturers Bank built this industry and made it what it is today. And today, you cannot go into a bank. It's just not going to happen. If you want to start your own business, you're going to add another zero to that. And you're going to start with $500,000. And then you have a chance to maybe be successful. I once met a woman in San Francisco who had a $20 million company. And she was looking to hire an accountant to help her. And I talked to her. In 1 hour's time, I asked her a key question because I really got to the problem. And I asked her, are you in business? No, I said it to her this way. Why are you in business? She says, I like to design. I like to make clothing. I said, are you in business to design and make clothing? Or are you in business to make money? She thought for a minute. She said, I really want to design and make clothing. And I said, this meeting is over. I cannot help you. You have a $20 million business that's in trouble. You will go out of business within the next 12 months because you are not focused on the number one thing, making money. So if you don't want to make money, if you want to design, I'm out of here. That's the most important thing to do is design. And I walked out, and within 3 months, their $20 million business was history, and the banks closed the door. Now, when you go into business, you need a good accountant, you need a good lawyer, you need a good insurance agent, because you got to insure all these things you're doing. So the banker, the accountant, the factor, the insurance company, those are the ingredients to get you in business. Now our speakers have really given you a lot of great information already. I'm not going to cover what they did, but I'm going to cover what I think is important, and that is a business plan. And you're all hopefully taking classes here. You all understand what it is about a business plan. You have to create one. But a business plan requires a projection. Oh, it's up there already. Isn't that nice? God. Well, that's a balance sheet. I want to talk a little about it. A balance sheet. You start your business with $500,000 of cash. What are you going to do with that cash? How long is it going to last? Is it going to last you 1 season? Is it going to last you a year? Everybody is going to get a certain amount of time that money is going to be used up. I've had clients start their business, and they have gone through $1.8 million before they ship their first garment. And And guess what? Those companies really had a big capital spending before they got started. They had a lot of money. And I'll give you an example of one of those companies that did that. They started, they went through $1.8 billion. They started shipping and shipping and shipping. And 5 years later, that company was sold. Liz, that was sold to Kelly. And the paycheck was $75 million up front and an earnout for another $75 million. So it can be done. Now, can you go into business today with $50,000? Yes, you can. But you don't want to spend that money very quickly. You got to be very cautious about how you spend the money because it does go quickly. I have various categories. I'm going to have selling expenses, manufacturing, design, shipping, and general administrative expenses. You must schedule these out month by month. Think about it. I got to create a line. If I've only got $50,000 to start my business, I might only be able to put $5,000 into my line. If I have $500,000 to start my business, I may be able to invest $50,000 in the line. I look at about 10% of your capital to put into starting your line. Once I've got a line put together, I have to I got to be shopping the stores to make sure I'm putting a line together, that I know what I want to produce. I want to know the selling price of the line I put together. I want to know what it's going to cost to put it together. Because if I put together a very expensive line, because that's what I want to put together, but you look at the retail prices for the line and say nobody will be able to afford it, why do it? You got to create something that people can buy. So your design has to fit the marketplace for where you want to be. And I'm going to put down all these costs in here, and I'm going to lay them out month by month, because you have to think in terms of that. There's other things you create in a projection. I'm going to just flip through the screens. You know, I schedule out my accounts payable. If this is when I'm buying, and the top section here is when I'm buying these things, the bottom section is when I have to pay for these items. I also have to basically think long-term. Once I get the business going, I need a factor. The best thing about the apparel industry is I can factor my receivables with one of the major factors. As you all know, CIT went bankrupt yesterday. But they're still a major player, and they're still going to be in business for many years. And there are many other factors. But when I factor my receivables, you know, I ship today. If I factor and I sell my receivables to a factor, I can borrow the money tomorrow. And I can borrow 80% of those receivables, which means I can use that money to buy more goods. And that keeps the cycle going. That's one of the great things about the apparel industry. Because of factoring, you can turn your dollars many, many times. And if you did have a factor, you couldn't do that. Cash flow. It's important to see. I have money coming in, and I've got the money going out. And I always want to have money in the bank, because that's important. Good, I'll go backwards. I want to make sure I cover these. I think hopefully the school can make this model available to you, because it's in Excel. It's a great tool to play with, and it will really help you understand that every business plan you've seen created, and I've been involved in the Anderson School over at that other school, UCLA, and they have a program for entrepreneurs, and I know this school has it here at USC, where you basically have people put together these elaborate business plans. And every one of you that wants to be in business has to create that business plan. You need to be able to make sure these models work, because the money goes very quickly. I'm going to leave these for you. Every business has got to have a lot of licenses, and I'll leave it. I have about 100 of these here. If you want to be in business in the city of Los Angeles, you need a business license. You can't operate. The city won't let you operate without a city, business license. You have to have the sales tax permit. We all think about, you ship into Los Angeles or California. Do you have to charge sales tax? Well, if you're selling to somebody else who's going or resell your product, you don't need to charge sales tax. But guess what? You better know their resale number. If you don't know their resale number, the State Board of Equalization is going to say you didn't comply with the law, you got to pay sales tax, which can become very expensive. Besides that, you ship out of state. You don't need to collect sales tax if you're shipping out of the state of California. But you know, other states are hurting for money. And they're now coming after the California companies that are shipping into Texas, New York, Illinois, and they're trying to hit you for sales tax if you have a sales rep in those territories. They're saying you should have been collecting sales tax, or you should have received a sales tax number, a resale number, from the people in those states. It's a war out there by these state governments trying to collect money. So they're going after it. You as an employer, you hire employees. Many of you in new businesses think you're going to give them a 1099 and you're not going to put them on your payroll. And you're not going to do payroll taxes. Well, if they're working exclusively for you, full-time, guess what? You got to put them on the payroll. You got to do payroll taxes. You got to comply with the law. I have had people put out of business because they didn't put people on the payroll. And the government comes in and says they should have done the payroll. You should have collected payroll taxes from them. You should have done withholding. And you're responsible for the withholding. So they hit you for backward withholding. And guess what? If the employee didn't pay their taxes, and you can't prove they pay their taxes, the government's going to hit you for the taxes. Another major area, many of you use or will use contractors to do work for you. Well, these contractors have to comply with the laws. They have to give you their employer identification numbers, because if they're a corporation, that's fine. If they're not a corporation and they don't give you the proper information about their social security number or their ID number, you again could be hit with back withholding. And I had a contract, I had a manufacturer who used a lot of sewing contractors, and they didn't get their proper federal identification numbers. And when my client was audited, it was a new client, by the way, I wasn't responsible for it. But when they were audited, the government asked for the numbers, the federal ID numbers of the contractors. My client could not produce them. The government gave them 20% back withholding. They had done $1 million+ in a 6-month period of contract labor. 20% back withholding was $200,000. Client didn't have it, the government said you're done, you're out of business. They were put out of business really quickly. So complying with all these laws is very tricky, but very important. Because of the time constraints, my buddy over here is not staring at me. I'm not going to do this. Let's go back over to Mark and let him put questions.
So I guess you get something out of one of these lectures. If you had to pay to get what Ron just offered for you for nothing, you would be paid very dearly. So everybody take advantage of his licensors and also his model which he put up so graciously offered to everybody. Take advantage of any of you who are starting out in business. I can tell you that every time we have a new project or a new plan or something to do, bang, we go right to that model. We start filling it out, seeing how much money it's going to take, and it's a great discipline to do before you start out to know where you're going to be. And you might have enough money for 7 months, but then already 7 months before, you're going to figure out what you're going to do in the 8th month. Could I invite our 3 eloquent panelists to come to the front and take a chair if we could?
I think you talked about a feasibility study to see whether the applied for was worth putting on the market.
Well, there are many services an inordinate amount of services, specialists in that you would hire. We have Sperling Hillman, we have Directives West, the Donegal office, that will give you an analysis, a demographic analysis of the product, and will give you an analysis of whether that product is feasible. The trick will be to define your retail chain, your retail distribution method. In other words, if you're going to go to department stores, it's a different feasibility than if you're going to sell to specialty stores. If you're going to try and sell to Walmart and Target, it certainly is very different than selling to Saks and Neiman's. So again, you must define your chain, where your product belongs, who you think will buy it, and then do the feasibility study. The reverse doesn't work. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned factory. Factory. There are factors which are banks today. They're all banks. And what they will do is they will buy your accounts receivable. So if you ship $50,000 this week, you have the ability, you sell your paper, the receivable, the invoice, to the factor. They will own that paper. They will collect from the customer, do all your bookkeeping, collect the money from the customer, and they will also, on day one, when you give them the invoice after you shipped it, they will loan you 80%, most of the factors give you 80% of that money, so that you can immediately, if you ship $50,000, they'll hand you a check the next day for $40,000 to put in your checking account to pay your bills. So you don't have to wait for the department store, specialty stores to pay you to have additional money. And factors get paid long before individual manufacturers get paid because they have more clout.
Yeah, right here in front.
If you're a small-time entrepreneur just starting out, what is a good way to find a good accountant, a good lawyer? How do you make a good team?
You call us.
You know, it's very relationship-driven. You have to interview, say, 2 or 3 accountants, and it's one you're very, very comfortable with. Same thing for the lawyer. You have to have a comfort. We're your partners. Truly are. We're on your team. We're here to help you. We're here to answer questions. We're here to guide you, to coach you. So if you're not comfortable with a team, you get someone you're comfortable with.
And I might add, because I've gone through this process many times, and I've done it in a number of countries, and actually, you look at 2 of my team members right here, and I go back to when we first got together. When you go through that budget of Ron's, and you know, it has all the various posts. One great good advice someone who actually made $1 billion, bright guy, gave me when I was about 30 or so. He told me, he said one thing that's very, very key is don't save money on the people around you. He said always surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are. Don't ever get someone that you're smarter than on your team. Good advice. Sometimes that costs money. So sometimes if you have the $50,000 and you're going to put 10% into the line, also for your advisors and your accountant, your attorney, your insurance person who you know shouldn't be billing you but selling insurance. But you know the team you put around, you know, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. You know, like get the best you can, because you know it's going to save you absolutely from going down the wrong way. If you take the time to go in to see Ilse, and I'm sure, like all of us, our doors are open to young entrepreneurs coming in. We'll have lunch with you or whatever, and you know, pick our brains, and I'm sure these gentlemen and Ilse would also, their organization is set up for that.
Just wanted a little bit of a reality check here, that many of the younger people, they start out of the trunk of the car or out of the garage imprinting on t-shirts. And the first smell of success, they get QuickBooks or have Uncle Harry or Aunt Fanny do their books because somebody knew how to do some bookkeeping. At a certain point, when you think that there might be, in a feasibility study, a chance of success, that's the time to say, I'm out of here, let me find some pros. Because it's usually that first hump of success that destroys most of our talent. That they have a great idea and they start out and there's a little bit of success and that's when they need to call the pros.
Let's focus on the pros. And what is a pro? When you're selecting any kind of a service provider, whether it's an accountant or an attorney or any other consultant, the most important thing for you to find out is whether they are familiar with what it is that you want to do. And that is a key question. Ask a lot of questions. Have you done this before? Who have you represented? Who have you helped before? Give me some examples. And do your own due diligence. And as Ron said, interview more than one person. Getting a referral to somebody who is trusted is a good way to start, but make sure that these are people that know what they're doing and are familiar with whatever it is that you want to do. If it's an apparel company, then hook yourself up with a guy like Ron who handles a lot of apparel companies. If it's some other type of a product, find out service providers that have a lot of experience in that particular area.
Yeah, over here.
My name is Drew Clark. I'm in the Marshall School of Business. I'm curious, each of you have very different perspectives on the apparel industry and fashion, and you probably have a lot of experience over the years. And I'm curious what you, from each one of you, would be the biggest misstep that you've seen people make on a number of different occasions.
Good question.
Inventory.
Ron?
Yeah, I think people go into business and they buy inventory on the dreams that it's the greatest inventory and it will sell. And I've had a lot of successful clients stumble because inventory is a kiss of death. You must basically sell, then go buy the inventory and produce it and ship it. People who take the other approach, I'll bring in all this inventory, don't worry, I'll sell it. What happens is you sell a chunk of it, maybe 50%, for full price right out of the bat. That other 50%, you can't get rid of it, and you sell it substantially below cost. So all this great profit you made in the first bunch is now lost in the second bunch of goods that you sell. And I'll tell you, inventory will kill you in this business. You can cut expenses, you cannot pay yourselves, but if you buy inventory that you can't sell, you're going to go out of business. And that's when people get in trouble.
Ilse?
Your team, I would say, certainly, inventory is number one, but inventory comes after you've decided what to make. And we use it as a moving arrow. If you picture an arrow that just keeps moving to one side or another, and 25% of that arrow is new stuff, brand new, that you're testing. And 25% at the other end is old stuff. You think it might sell because it's sold before. It's the middle 50% that's going to make your money. And that keeps moving. You've got to keep dropping that stuff that you thought was going to sell and keep trying the new, although most of it will not work. And not changing your product. Keeping the same old, same old. We've seen this time after time. Liz Claiborne is an example. Many, many companies are an example where they haven't moved the product. So you may think you have a great idea today, tomorrow it's over. That thing has to move, but it's not that dramatic. It's very subtle. And of course, you must be able to accept the fact that somebody's going to tell you you're wrong. We have seen so many designers who fall in love with their product, and they don't have the other person standing there saying, we have too many long sleeves, or there's too much red in the line. Somebody's got to be your critic that you're going to listen to.
I agree with everything that was said, and I want to highlight something that Ron said earlier in his talk about falling in love with your own product and designing. You have to understand who your customer is and what it is that they want and what it is that you're delivering. And then you have to control your cost. For example, if you are going to be dealing with introducing a junior line of clothing, and you're going to be aiming at teenagers. Well, a teenager, although there are exceptions to this rule, a teenager isn't typically going to want to go into a store and spend $450 on a pair of jeans. So if you're going to be designing jeans for the junior market, you need to be at the right price point. Then you have to work backward. What am I going to design? How am I going to have it made for a wholesale price that is going to be able to reach this price point by the ultimate store? And you have to, where we went wrong with the Fly Girls concept and where I learned one of the most important lessons is that we were designing really cool stuff, but it was way too expensive for the customer base. The stores would order it because they liked it, but it was about $10 to $20 too much per item for that demographic. So what could have been a really successful introduction of a new brand became a failure because we didn't understand who our customer was, and the designer was designing product that they liked, and they fell in love with their own product. So you've got to control your cost, you've got to understand who your customer is, and then work backward from there. Figure out what is the price point that your customer can afford, and what are you designing for that customer.
Anybody else? Back here?
For like young designers, I know that like consignment is a big thing. A lot of stores want to work. That's how they'll work with you. How do you feel about that? Is that like a
I think the real expert on consignment should be addressing that question.
I'm very sorry, but
Consignment goods.
Consignment goods.
Why do it?
why do it?
or should you do it basically?
As a seller or a buyer?
As a seller.
Okay, there's a whole litany of reasons why you should do consignment, but one of the most important reasons is that recently PricewaterhouseCoopers, who you might know of, is an accountant auditing company. They've done an in-depth analysis of the retail landscape in the year 2015 and beyond. And one of their most compelling conclusions is that there will be a closer integration between sellers and manufacturers, that the relationship will become almost, and if not incestuous, between these two entities, and they'll get closer and closer and closer together in the successful retail business plans. And so there's a whole group of things that are going to change in the new economy. Where people that tell me that we're going to go back the way we were, like in 2005, 6, the go-to-go days, and that after the upswing after the tech boom, I don't believe that. I believe that things will come back, yes, but they're going to come back differently. And one of the things that changes this whole equation, and Ron's $500,000 for a startup is very optimistic, is that there's no more banks. Certainly for a retailer, and this is consignment to a retailer, there might be factoring companies, although bankrupt, like CIT, but for a retailer like me, there's no more banks. So that being the case, we have to look to our resources and come up with new solutions to old problems, and it's a win-win, because a lot of people, rather than having goods sitting on their shelves and just waiting to be sold, or what Ron describes as inventory that's optimistic, get it out in front of the public for a price that will sell. And also, if you go to prestige and status retailers that will provide for you marketing, merchandising, getting in stores where buyers from all over the world go. And these type of stores, there are probably, in the United States, there's probably 25 really key stores throughout the entire United States that buyers, when they come to this country, come and look and see, just to see what happens. Like when we go to Europe, we go to certain stores, to 10 Corso Como in Milan, Colette in Paris. I could name them for each city. So those type of stores, putting your goods on consignment for those type of stores is absolutely in your interest.
I'd like to add something to that. We probably, without using the word consignment, the entire apparel industry is consignment sales. Because I'll tell you why. you get a hotline and you're selling it to Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom's, Saks, and they keep buying and buying and buying. And all of a sudden, the product stops selling for some reason. It's getting stale. Well, they took these goods in. Now they call you up and say, guess what? We got all your goods that aren't selling. We either want to return them to you or we want markdown money from you. And so therefore, every sale is on what I call wheels. It goes out your doors, and if it doesn't sell, they're coming back to you for some money. So one of the things I'll tell you is don't ever oversell and ship too much goods into a store. You have to manage your own retail, and that's why consignment's important, because you can manage how much retail goods go into a store, and you can watch how it's selling on a weekly basis, and don't get yourself caught with having too much goods in one store.
I have a little bit of a different perspective. Mark is talking about the retailer's perspective for the most part, and for a retailer it is a very good idea to carry consignment goods because it lowers your risk. But for a new company, generally you should avoid consignment like the plague.
Like Marciano did?
Well, no. I think that...
But the first story, Marciano, he's bought his first 5 pair himself.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So
George bought the first 5 pair himself.
So here's the problem. When you want a customer to be committed enough to your item to be willing to pay for it. And now, I'm going to give you some examples. For example, Mark made mention of an example of if you can get your product into a really Class A store that you want to be there, that is something worth trying. Because otherwise you'll never get in that store, and just being able to say that your goods are in that store is going to help you. So you might as well give it away. It's like advertising. That is useful and worthwhile doing. But your average run-of-the-mill store that's willing to take your products in on a consignment, you want to avoid that like the plague, because they have no motivation to sell your product. None. They're not paying for it. They're not going to promote it. They're not going to do you any favor. You're the last person on the list that's going to get their product sold or promoted in the store. So you have to be very careful. If you're going to sell on consignment, you've got to do it the way Mark said, which is select a very cool place that you want your stuff to be, and it might work for you, but generally, I would avoid it.
Or some sort of a relationship that you
and
have.
That would work as well.
You're important to that person. For example, I don't know, maybe there's, I think of anything, the communities outlying Los Angeles, San Marino, Woodland Hills, Laguna Beach, this and that. Were you to be a jewelry designer, for example, and you have a relationship with the owner of that store, and you have almost like a concession stand there. I mean, that's guerrilla financing and of your own business, because you're down there, making it happen. We had a gentleman here sitting up earlier in one of our captain series by the name of Mr. Robert McKnight, who now has a $2.6 billion company where he did just that. He would go to Valser with his stuff, and he even stood on the floor and said, buy my board shorts, Well, that worked. So, if you can create, the more of you and your passion that you can put into your product so that your product has a story, the better it will sell. We have a phenomenal shoe line called Marcel. It's extremely expensive. And we have it at American Rag, and it doesn't sell. And I was talking today to our shoe buyer, and I said, why doesn't this sell? It's just a dime. And she says, it's just gorgeous, and then this, but it's expensive and there's no story. And I said, well, how many, have you talked to these people and found out? Because it's handmade, it comes from Italy, it's a family that's been in business for 300 years. The son took it over, and he had a whole other day. There's a whole story about this product. And besides that, the women's boots look like sort of medieval S&M clothes, all in black, and the guys, they're killer. They're absolutely killer. But there's no story. So the more you can bring of you and a story, passion, and something to your product, the better it'll do.
The other thing to this, you used the right word, concession. The two models for that, A, cosmetics is on a wheel. all cosmetics is a concession. But the company owns the salespeople as well. So if you're dealing with MAC or Chanel or Revlon is paying half their employees, otherwise it will not be sold. And the other model is European. If you go into most of the stores in Europe, in Paris, for example, the manufacturers own that space. They are responsible for the sales on that square footage, and they must bring in but that includes, they own the inventory, they own the responsibility.
Galerie Lafayette, for example, as you
It's
know,
all-
Galerie Lafayette is a real estate company.
Right.
It happens to be France' as big as department store, but forget about the department store, it's a real estate company. Let's take two more, and then, right here.
I'd like to know your thoughts on developing a company that largely uses the web as an outlet as opposed to retail.
Well, the number one issue is legal on using the web as retail. I mean, the critical issues are Larry's issues and the returns. There's a 42% return factor on apparel. I mean, Walmart doesn't even sell apparel on email. E-tailing. The number one retailer on email for apparel is Amazon. And if they get it back, they send it right back to the manufacturer.
Very hard
Very hard.
to get something started via the internet on promoting a brand. How are you going to get traffic to your site? How are you going to let people know? People, when it comes to items that people wear, they want to look at it, they want to try it on. And a lot of manufacturers have experimented with kind of these virtual sites where you can get as close as you can get. It still hasn't worked. It hasn't taken off yet. We're not there yet.
Most people in apparel buy two sizes. You know you're going to get one back.
I will say, the successful people who have gone into the web business have a great brand already. The customer knows who they are, so they know what they're buying before they buy. And those are my successful web people. You've got to have, well, I'm talking manufacturers. They basically will have their distribution channels out there, and people know them. I'll tell you, one of my successful guys is James Purse. Everybody knows the product, so they know when they go online, they know that T-shirt, how it fits, and they can buy it. And his web is extremely successful.
To confirm this, our launch on apparel, we've been doing homewares for a number of years at American Bag and OBD. We've teamed up with a company that's done successful retail web selling in Europe called Farfetch, and they teamed up with Revolve, and I see the head nodding here. Revolve last year shipped 95 million. Realized sales of 55 million, therefore confirming almost to the 42%, not 41, of how much it will be returned. There's a young Sri Lankan gentleman who lives in London who came to see us. It's a company called Body Metrics. And Body Metrics is solely to address this problem. You go into the store and you walk into this pod of sorts, and it takes 200 measurements of you, and for $30 you get this disc. Now you can buy a jean that will be completely fitted to you by having this disc, or you get the disc, and what he's trying to promote is to get the J. Crews of the world.
Well, Levi tried it already.
Right. Well, this gentleman sold his last company for about $200 million, so he has the money to spend on this. And anyway, so they're addressing this problem of 42% returns. Omera?
Does LLC offer some of the tax, some of the benefits of the other corporations like the subchapter S
An LLC offers many of the same benefits as a corporation, but in an LLC, you don't need to be a subchapter S. Does anybody know what a subchapter S corporation is? Okay, basically, in a subchapter S corporation, all the profits flow through to the shareholders directly. So it's not, you don't have to have a separate corporate return and then a separate personal return. All the money of profit that flows through the corporation goes to the shareholder directly. Now, in an LLC, it works kind of the same way. All the income that comes into the LLC are distributed or have to be accepted as income by the members of the LLC directly. So the income is directly passed through. Actually, that was actually a question for Ron. But
If you're already a regular corporation, can you switch to LLC?
If you are a C corporation, you can usually switch to an S corporation.
I know.
Much more difficult to become an LLC. Today, I don't think either one of us would ever have a client become a C corporation or an S corporation to begin with. Today, we're going directly to the LLC.
it's really much easier to deal with.
Yeah.
Can you start, you need
You open up a new company.
new company?
There's just so much more flexibility.
We have a couple people that just keep, back there, you,
Yes, okay. All right, I have a question about finding factories overseas. That's kind of my problem right now, is that I have to find one. I don't know how to do it, and like what agreements I have them sign, like do I give them a sample and make sure that it's exactly that sample, nothing less than that? Like what contracts do I sign with them?
Well, let's go ahead.
He'll tell you the legal part, and I'll tell you you have no protection whatsoever. Okay, so let's start with that premise. In terms of your protection with specifications and that it was real, you have technology. The new technology on CAD and specs and everything makes sure that everything is online. There is extraordinary new supply-side technology just for that purpose, that nothing comes to you unless it's a CAD is taken, a spec is taken, and of course the problem is letters of credit, that you have to pay for it before you get it. So you have to take all these precautions that everything is as you ordered. But there's very little protection you have on offshore. Larry?
First off, in terms of identifying a manufacturer, it's like any other service provider. You need to know something about the manufacturer. I mean, picking the right manufacturer is a very important decision to make. So make sure you can find out as much as you can about why select this particular manufacturer. So make sure you know something about them and that you have some contacts, etc., because that's a problem. One of the biggest issues in the apparel industry today, and we're going to be talking about this, I'm going to be actually using Ilse as an expert in a case, is that it's important now more than ever to protect your design intellectual property through a copyright or a trademark. A trademark is a name, so basically it doesn't really protect what something looks like. A work of art, like a design of some sort, can be protected in certain circumstances. So it's important to copyright your works and let the world know that you have a copyright. Now, fortunately, in today's world, you don't actually have to file a copyright notice for everything that you do, but you do have to let people know that you are the author of this particular work and that it's copyrighted. Now, just yesterday, we had a company walk into our office, and they had spent a lot of time developing these very intricate designed fabrics. And they had pitched these fabrics to a private label maker for Walmart for a very large order. And this private label maker did color specimens and line sheets and the whole bit, and then they went and knocked off the design. She made little changes on a CAD device, and Walmart ordered these products from this maker and didn't buy the fabric from this company. And that company actually has a pretty decent claim for a copyright infringement. But this happens all the time in this industry. So,
I got a feeling we didn't quite answer what you have a problem today finding these overseas producers, correct?
I mean, you definitely answered part of my question for sure. But I'm just wondering how to find a factory overseas. Should I go and travel to Hong Kong, or should
No, there
how do I find those
are companies that do just that. They are LDP providers, meaning landed duty paid providers. They work with agents. They know companies all over Vietnam, China, Korea, wherever it may be the best place. They are agents. But you are still ultimately responsible for that.
So how do you find the agents is your question now, right? Yeah. Do you have friends in the apparel industry that import? That's one way. You got to basically ask people who are manufacturers who do something similar to what you're doing, who they're using, because the referrals from people who have had success is what you need to find, because there's too many bad people out there too. So it's tough. It's not easy.
I want to add one more thing. In the apparel world, turnaround is very important. And if you're going to be importing things and you are in a very fast-running fashion seasonal business, you need to be able to turn things on a dime. And if you're going to make really small quantities, it may be worthwhile making them domestically until you grow large enough to justify importing. So think about that very carefully before you make that decision.
Just a couple.
I have a question. There's something among investors, and my concern is taking them around and shopping them. Just that question about someone, quick sketch it and boom, you're done. And you said copyright.
take that.
Can you actually copyright a design of a dress?
No, you cannot. And we certainly hope you never will be able to. That will open up a basket of worms because there's nothing original in garment. A pattern is a pattern, but you're concerned about being copied as you present. If my advice in those circumstances, if you're that talented, keep designing, keep making it again. If they're knocking you off, you're good. If you're knocking, then they'll want to see more. If it's good enough for them to copy, they'll want to see more. For the most part, young people or new designers are so worried about being copied from a sketch or a presentation that they lose track of the fact that it's a mood, it's an image. Am I correct, Mark? It's an overall look. One garment, to be copied from one garment, should not deter you from being successful.
And is it realistic to think that I would sell my ideas to a design company? A company that has the resources?
No, it really isn't. I mean, and I get those calls all the time. Perhaps my colleagues here do not, or I certainly get the calls all the time that I have such great ideas for new jeans, or I have great ideas for new graphics, but I want to give them to someone to manufacture and make a royalty arrangement or something. It really doesn't happen unless you have enough money to put in the pot yourself, and you want to be a partner.
Part of Larry's presentation was, he says there's a million good ideas out there, it's all about execution, and that's really, 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 really true, especially in, I call them, in my world, I call them flower pickers. I have people come in and tell me how I should pick the flowers, and I should be your buyer. They come in, and at the end of the day, being a buyer in retail, for example, is reading a computer report, understanding profitability, understanding margins. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen. I just don't need someone to come in and tell me what's beautiful.
So I would just keep designing my collection and just go out and try to continue to market it and...
I really recommend to young people going into business, take a job first and get the inside training of a corporation that you can work with and learn from, because this is osmosis. Learn as much as you can get. Then you can venture out on your own, or if you're so successful, that manufacturer might make you a partner in that division.
Thank you.
Let's do one last one right here in front.
Okay, thank you. My question was kind of opposite to what your question is, and probably more Ron than you do. I've already committed to work for an accounting firm and become a CPA, but my dream is to be a part of all of this, and I'm just wondering, I've been with previous speaker sessions, and I've heard, you can't, know your financial statements, and so that's what I'm doing now, but I just have this fear that I'm going to get wrapped up into the job that I'm taking and not be willing to take the risk. And so one of the things that you guys all said was having a team. How can I ensure that, 5 years down the line, when I become a CPA and hopefully audited many apparel companies, that I could kind of step out on my own and be able to do something that another person that shares that.
And
Can I answer that?
Yes, go ahead. Then I'll respond. Go ahead.
The fact that you're here tonight means that you have passion and love, and you'll sacrifice your personal time for your career and what you do. And people that do that are always successful. Keep doing it.
Keep shopping.
Stay on.
And I will add, if you go the CPA route, and you go to a firm that specializes in the apparel industry, you're going to learn lots of different things in the industry. And then you could apply it and say, one day I've had enough of accounting, I want to get into the industry, and then you go jump into it. But you got to have that passion.
Okay.